Hi, welcome again to the Old Principle. Today we have a new lesson. It's a simple one, but with a very interesting lesson for all of us. This is lesson 84, carrying a bitter load. Carrying a bitter load. 要扛着一个苦涩的担子. Okay, we'll look at that for a minute. I might just say 苦涩, bitter load, 担子. Okay. With that, we'll ask Mrs. Ash to join us over here. And if you will, this wasn't a bitter load, was it? This is a very light load.
Light.
A very light load. Okay, go ahead and read.
Okay.
One day, two monks were walking through the countryside. They were on their way to another village to help bring in the crops. As they walked, they saw an old woman sitting at the edge of a river. She could not cross on her own because there was no bridge. The first monk offered, "We will carry you across if you would like." "Oh, thank you," she said gratefully, accepting their help. So the two men joined hands, lifted her between them, and carried her across the river. On the other side, they set her down, and she went on her way. After the men had walked 2 kilometers, the second monk began to complain. "Look at my clothes," he said. "They're filthy from carrying that woman across the river. And my back still hurts from lifting her. It's getting stiff." The first monk just smiled and nodded his head. After walking 3 more kilometers, the second monk griped again. "My back is hurting me so badly, and it's all because we had to carry that silly woman across the river. I cannot go any farther because of the pain." He lay down beside the road and began to moan. The first monk looked down at his partner. "Have you wondered why I'm not complaining?" he asked. "Your back hurts because you are still carrying the woman, but I set her down 5 kilometers ago." Many of us, in dealing with our friends and families, are like the second monk who couldn't let go. We are not willing to forgive and forget what people said about us, or we hold on to the memory of the bad things they did to us. Years go by, but we insist on carrying these painful memories. We only hurt ourselves, and we have no one to blame but ourselves.
Thank you. Now you're free. Until what?
The end.
The end. But before we get to the end, you will be back. Okay? Okay, so where are we? Today's story, number 84, begins this way. One day, 2 monks were walking. They were walking through the countryside. Monks, of course, is 和尚. So if they're walking through the countryside, what's happening? They are not in the city. For sure, they're not in the city. They're in the countryside. 他们在郊外. Okay, 乡下, or whatever you want to call it. They are out in the countryside. They were on their way to another village. Okay, 另外一个村庄. They were on their way, they were walking, they were traveling on their way to another village. But what is the purpose? What is the purpose? To help bring in the crops. Okay? To help bring in the crops means to actually in here, to help bring in the crops may have two meanings. One would be the 帮助他们收割, or if you just looked at it on the surface, 字面上, or 把他们的收获带进来. Anyway, whatever the case is, they were going to another village to help them. Going on. As they walked, they saw an old woman sitting at the edge of a river. So obviously, they're going to have to cross a river. 他们要过一条河. Okay? And they saw an old woman sitting at the edge. What? 坐在边上. Okay? They're on the edge, 旁边, the edge of a river. Go ahead. She could not cross on her own. She had a problem. She couldn't cross the river by herself. When you say on her own, 她自己也没办法. Sometimes if I say, I can't do this by myself or on my own, that means I need help. So she was just waiting there for some help. Because there was what? No bridge. There was no bridge. 没有桥. There are a lot of places that don't have bridges. Okay? No bridges. So what do? Well, there are many ways of crossing a river. But the lady somehow had a problem. She could not cross the water. Okay, go ahead. The first monk, 第一个和尚, the first monk said, we will carry you across if you would like. Okay, so if you would like, here is 你不介意的话, 你不介意的话, if you would like, okay, we will carry you across. This is the first monk. Okay, so what happened? Thank you, she said gratefully. Okay, when you are grateful, what does that mean? Grateful means 蛮有感恩的, okay? 有感谢的心, okay? She said gratefully, accepting their help. 接受他们的帮助. Going on. So, what happened? So, the two men joined hands. They joined hands and lifted her between them. Mrs. Ash, you need to put that down. Come over here, okay? And maybe, how would you do it? Yeah. Is this? No, like this. Okay, can you see that? Can you see that? This is one way that we have done it before. And this is very strong because your hands are on top like this. And you go down and then I think we went down easier when we were younger. I heard crack. Yeah. Okay. So that's how they held hands. So the two men joined hands. They put their hands together, 手拉着手, okay, and lifted her between them, okay, lifted her up and carried her across the river. Actually, I don't know if you've crossed very many rivers in your life, but that's actually pretty good, because if the water is quite high and if the water is very fast, then it's easy to be unstable, 不稳定, okay? But if they're carrying the lady between the two of them, that adds more weight and it's much more stable, 更加稳定, because it's heavier, 比较重，重量多。Going on the other side, okay, on the other side, they set her down, 就让她放下她, okay, and she went on her way. To went on her way, that means that she just went to go to wherever she was going, wherever that was. Going on. After the two men had walked 2 kilometers, after the men had walked 2 kilometers, 2 kilometers, yeah, 相当的距离啊. The second monk began to 第二个和尚. Now remember, who was it that suggested they carry the lady? 第一个和尚. Okay? This is important to know who did what. Okay? The second monk, 第二个和尚, began to what? 抱怨, complain. Do you like to listen to people complain? Nobody likes a complainer. Do you like to listen to people? 人家抱怨的时候，使你很快乐吗？不可能啊。In English, we say we don't like whiners. To whine is not crying, but they're complaining. Whine, okay? Look at my clothes. 看我的衣服. He said, they are filthy. What does filthy mean? Filthy means dirty. 很脏. 非常脏. Okay? They are filthy from carrying that woman across the river. 就是因为我们带她过河，使我的衣服非常脏. Okay? Filthy, dirty. Okay? Not clean. Okay? Going on. And my back. Oh, my back. It hurt. Oh. From lifting her. Maybe she was heavy. I don't know. But anyway, he says, oh, my back is so sore. It's getting stiff. You know what stiff means? Stiff is not soft and pliable. It's 很坚硬, 很坚硬. It doesn't move very well. It doesn't move very well. And it's, oh, my son. Yeah. You know, have you ever had a stiff back? I think we've all had a stiff back where we say, if you bend over, it hurts. If you bend up, it hurts. It just hurts. Okay? So he said, the first monk just smiled and nodded his head. Huh? And that's all going on. After walking 3 more kilometers, 再走3公里的时候, the second monk, 第二个 和尚又是 well, this time, first time it was complained. To gripe, or in this case, griped, is the same meaning as to complain. 抱怨. 抱怨. The second monk griped again. Going on. My back is hurting me so badly. Oh, my back is hurting me so badly. And it's all because we had to carry that silly woman across the river. Okay, so what's he saying? My back is hurting because we had to carry the silly woman. Now, actually, in this case, the woman may not have been silly. Now, it's interesting that sometimes in English we say this way, but it doesn't mean so. We say the silly woman. Now, silly is 愚蠢的, or foolish even. But in this case, the woman wasn't foolish. But he is blaming her. 怪他, to blame. Recently I was talking to some people and I'm talking about the blame game. So 怪是一种游戏, so 怪别人, okay? And it's all because we had to carry that silly woman across the river. Oh, you know, you can understand what he's saying. He said, 没有她我们就好啦. Okay? If we didn't have her around, everything would be okay. Going on. I cannot go any farther because of the pain. And he said, he lied down upon the ground, right in the road, beside the road, and began to moan. He must have a really sore back. Okay. Now, going on. The first monk, who, by the way, remember, who suggested they carry the lady? The first monk. Okay. The first monk looked down at his partner, 他的伙伴, his partner, and he looked down and he said, have you wondered why I am not complaining? 你有没有想到我为什么不抱怨? He asked. Going on. Your back hurts because you are still carrying the woman. Your back hurts because you are still carrying the woman. 为什么你的腰痛？你的背痛？ Because you are still, 你还在带她，扛着她。But I set her down 5 kilometers ago. 这个5公里以前呢，我已经把她就放下来，但你还在扛着她。Of course, what does that mean? You're still carrying her in your mind. In your mind. You didn't like it because you got your clothes dirty and you got wet and, you know, all these things going on. Many of us are dealing with our friends and families are like the second monk who couldn't let go. Many of us, 我们很多人，当我们应付或面对或跟我们的家里的人、朋友的打交道的时候 ，are like the second monk。我们很多人都像这个第二个和尚。Going on, we are not willing to forgive and forget what people said about us. I suppose this is the most important thing. We are not willing to forgive and forget what people said about us. Okay, 我们不愿意we say 饶恕 or 宽恕 okay, and forget 又忘记 you know, what people 对我们所说的话 we keep remembering, and in our minds it's kind of like it goes grumbling and rumbling around in our minds, 有一点点像这个翻老账 it just keeps going around and around and around in our minds. We are not willing to forgive, not willing to forget. Or 另外一个情况 or we hold on to the memory of the bad things they did to us. 我们就保在我们的思想里，我们还是把他们怎么样对待我们，特别是虐待我们的事情，就保留在我们的思想里。And or we hold on to 保留 okay, hold on to the memory 我们所记得的the memory of the bad things they did for us. Bad things 怎么样虐待我们。Go ahead. Years go by, but we insist on carrying these painful memories. 一年过一年 they go by, and yet we keep these memories in our minds. 我们根本就不放弃。We only hurt ourselves, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. We only hurt ourselves. 我们只不过是害自己，我们不是害别人。Because when you think about other people, you are unwilling to forgive other people. You are unwilling to forget what other people have done to them. It doesn't affect the other person. They don't know what you're thinking. Obviously, at least in my mind, the obvious thing is that when we keep these thoughts in our minds, then what happens? We hurt ourselves. 我们是害自己，不是害别人。Except that maybe you will still dislike, 恨别人。So, and when we hurt ourselves, who is to blame? Who is to blame? We just hurt ourselves. So 我们是害自己，我们要怪自己，我们要怪自己。Okay, Mrs. Ash, here we go. This is, at this part of our program, she never knows what I'm going to say. So, have you met some very unhappy people in your life?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, not very often.
Not too often. Well, so you mostly meet happy people,
Yes.
generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever heard that psychosomatic? Do you know what the word psychosomatic means? Oh, see, her brain is going around. Okay, I'll give you a hint. What we think affects our soul, our body.
Yes.
Okay, psychosomatic. There's a good word. Okay, can you spell that?
PSYCHO.
Oh, psycho.
Psychosomatic.
S.
SE.
S-O.
SOMATIC.
Whew, you passed. Okay. Okay. Psychosomatic. There is a whole branch of medicine. 这个医学，这有一方面是谈到这个我们的思想是怎么样影响我们的身体。You can make yourself sick, and you can make yourself well just by the way you think. Okay, with that now, let's take a look how you could write a letter to us. We have an email address, theoldprinciple@gmail.com. Theoldprinciple, 老校长 @gmail.com. 或者你可以看我们的网站 www.theoldprinciple.org www.theoldprinciple.org. For that, Mrs. Ash and I wish you a great day and join us again. Bye-bye.
Bye.